The most mysterious character turned out to be a voice from the telephone, introducing himself as Ollie. He claimed to be our ally. Throughout almost the entire third chapter, Ollie helped us, guiding us to the right locations so we could find the necessary items. However, we still don't know who has been talking to us all this time and why, after the death of Catnap, we can't hear him anymore. This mysterious caller burst into our lives unexpectedly through a phone call. But can we trust this voice? Is he really on our side? Why did Ollie decide to help us in the first place? There are plenty of questions. So far, this character hasn't been revealed to us. All we know about him is his name. Well, we've also heard his voice. Maybe Ollie is indeed a positive character, but was it him we were talking to? The third chapter was released relatively recently, but already so many theories have been swirling around, particularly about Ollie. Actually, several of them. And of course, the attentive, skeptical viewers and players who question everything started to think something was off with Ollie, that he could indeed be our enemy, not just any enemy, but a known one, meaning the prototype, and such a theory already exists. It would be quite interesting to see such a twist of events where we actually meet Ollie himself, and it unexpectedly turns out that he is the prototype, and suddenly a huge mechanical arm grows out of his body. From talking to Ollie at the very beginning, it becomes known that he is familiar with Poppy the doll and speaks highly of her. Poppy, in turn, speaks well of Ollie, saying he is kind and can be trusted. And in practice, we really see this to be true. He helps us, tells us where things are, where we need to go, what to beware of, and who. All that stuff. According to Ollie and Poppy, these kind monsters, which are few and far between, need us to stop the main villain, the prototype. However, we also find out that these same kind monsters are driven by not entirely sane thoughts. For example, Poppy talks about revenge against all the monsters that tormented them, us. In that case, how are we any better than those monsters? Ollie doesn't speak of revenge. To tell the truth, I myself don't fully understand what we're doing here. It turns out that some monsters are using us against other monsters as a tool, a pawn in their hands, and we must remember our original goal: to get out of here alive. There couldn't possibly be any intrigue within the Playtime company. Remember that Poppy wanted to help us escape from the very beginning of the second chapter. Unlike Poppy, Ollie doesn't seem so strange. His mood doesn't change abruptly like Poppy's did in the second chapter. First she was all sweet, and then suddenly cold and calculating. But in the third chapter, she's back to being the sweet girl again. Honestly, Ollie at least seems trustworthy. He initially tells us what we need to do, and overall the guy is nice, optimistic, joyful. And thanks to him, we finally understand our ultimate goal: to defeat the main villain, namely, the prototype. We need to understand who we're dealing with. Ollie, of course, learns who he is, but we can boldly assume that he's most likely a person, even a child, the last surviving child in the orphanage. Apparently, he found some safe place from where he can contact us by phone, probably some work phone that the employees of Playtime Company used to use, and he somehow immediately understood that we were in the orphanage. "I see you're puzzled," he says to us at the beginning. But how can he see us? And how did he even know there was someone in the orphanage who wouldn't harm him? He could have noticed through the cameras. The cameras in the room are watching us, but we can be reassured that it's not some monster watching us, but Ollie himself. And these cameras are literally everywhere. The recordings from the tapes that film the room from above testify to this. It's not hard to guess that all these recordings were made from surveillance cameras, and through them, Ollie is tracking us and controlling every step in case he needs to help us. But what arguments could support the idea that it's Ollie, a child, who's contacting us? Why can't Ollie be a monster? Where does he know Poppy the doll from? Clearly, Ollie is the same kind of doll as Poppy, or any other animated toy. A monster after all. The first argument, He knows this place well where we are, which means he's a monster because they all know the territory of the Playtime company since they've long since taken it over, and it's unlikely that Ollie is a former employee of the company. He would have immediately recognized his colleague and introduced himself as a long-lost stranger, but apparently the main character hears about Ollie for the first time. And something else. The words of Kissy Missy at school could confirm that we are indeed the only surviving employee and person from Playtime, since she is surprised that we are alive.
Yes, I remember. You used to work here. How are you alive?
Ollie could have been monitoring the situation through the cameras, and from his place of safety, he never had to emerge. What he subsisted on is a rhetorical question. How long he has even been in this orphanage, yet there are arguments in favor of Ollie being not a monster or an animated experiment, but just a regular child who survived after all the horror that happened. First of all, we only meet Ollie in play care, and he could have already thoroughly explored this location, meaning if he were a monster, he could have gone further. So, we can't definitively say Ollie is a monster or definitely a human. And if he's human, he's most likely an orphan from the orphanage. But then the main question arises that interests everyone. Is Ollie the prototype? Going back to what I mentioned at the beginning, Poppy the doll knows who Ollie is. They are acquainted, likely along with Kissy Missy. But there are some doubts that Ollie could have been the one calling us. Some lean towards the idea that we were talking to the prototype all this time because the prototype can change voices and, as we know, help the orphans escape from the orphanage using Theodore, who became Catnap. The prototype could mimic the voice of any orphan, so it wouldn't be hard to parody someone's voice. And the main argument to consider is that the prototype kills Catnap, and after that, we no longer hear Ollie. Maybe the prototype was too busy to call us, but with what remains unknown. In the prototype's behavior, many oddities can be noticed. If his goal was to kill the cat, why didn't he do it right away? The cat trusted him completely and genuinely considered him a god. Why not finish him off right away if you were going to do it in the end anyway? Why did the prototype kill him at all, since Catnap was quite a loyal minion who sincerely believed in him? Why would the prototype suddenly need to get rid of him? Why then did the prototype help us at all? He gets rid of all the monsters, drags them along with him, and at the same time leads the player further and further away. To be fair, it should be noted that even though they try to reveal more and more about the prototype, we still know absolutely nothing about him. In the third chapter, we still can't see anything beyond the hand. For us, the prototype is still a huge mechanical arm. Both his identity and his motives remain a secret to this day. The prototype is quite an interesting creature, even for the scientists themselves. On one of the tapes, a scientist confesses that the prototype contains very valuable information, though what kind is unknown. Perhaps this refers to its intelligence, as the prototype, while being confined, created a laser pointer for its escape. It manipulated Theodore to help it escape, and ultimately, using the same power of manipulation, it likely caused a massacre. Monsters suddenly went berserk and began devouring everyone in sight, and amid all this chaos, the prototype escaped to carry out its deeds. What exactly those deeds are, we're about to find out. Perhaps in its plan, the player is the missing piece, so it helps him progress through the factory and generally across the company's territory. As we make our way forward, we gradually get rid of the monsters, and it seems all these dead monsters end up with the prototype. But why, for example, didn't it appear before us in the second chapter and tell us everything? Perhaps for the realization of its plan, whatever it may be, it needs everything to go smoothly. Seeing what the prototype is doing, Poppy the doll might not trust it. Therefore, it imitated Ollie's voice to deceive both Poppy the doll and us, so no unnecessary questions would arise. And whether this hand is to be trusted, of course, it is not. After all, it's a villain. But this villain could have pretended to be someone else while not revealing itself, keeping everyone in their own opinion until the time comes, and apparently, that time will arrive when the prototype is ready to execute its plan. What that plan is, we'll find out in the fourth chapter.